All right, so we can actually use generics with traits, which kind of makes sense because generics are a way to limit the types of variables and parameters that are passed to structures and functions. Okay, and basically traits allow us to select only a subset of the potential types that we can pass through generics. Okay, so the theory is quite simple. Here we can have a function, let's say, color that will take a specific type of generic or a trait. Okay, here we have a generic t that is a colorable, let's say colorable is a specific trait, and we have a parameter of type t, and we can do whatever we want with that as long as we call the functions of the trait here. So that is in theory, and I think the best way to understand generics and traits is through practice. So let's go ahead and create a bit of structure here. We'll have a couple of structures that have a specific trait. We're going to implement that trait for the structures, and then we're going to create a function that only takes generics of that particular trait. Okay, so let's go ahead and see how we can use that. So I'm going to create first a trait, let's say bark, and this will have a function bark of and self. Okay, so this will basically give us a string. So we will implement this bark trait for a dog, but we will also have a structure cat that will not implement this bark. Okay, and when we have a function that calls for the structure to bark in our case, then we will only be able to pass the dog implementation and not the cat. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. We're going to have structure dog, and I'm going to have, let's say, species that is a and static string. Next up, I'm going to have a structure cat. And here, let's say we have color, that's going to be an and static string. Okay, so let's go ahead and implement bark for dog. Okay, obviously cats don't bark, so only the dog will bark. I'm going to implement the bark function here, and this will simply return format, and I'm going to have whatever species name we have, barking. And I'm going to have self.species. Or rather, this is just a return. Right, so I'm going to return the formatted string here. Okay, so let's have a function then. Outside of any structure or implementation, I'm going to have bark it that will only take generic t of type bark. And here we will have b of type t. Okay, so our variable is of type of this type of generic that is a type of bark. Okay, so there we go. Now we can simply print line. Okay, and here we have b dot, and you can see since b is a type of bark, then we already have the functionality available here, bark. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and on main function, and here we're going to create two elements from the two structures that we have. So let dog equals dog. Of course, you could create a constructor for this dog, but I'm going to say here species, let's say retriever. Okay, and let cat is going to be a cat with the color black. Okay, so I have my dog and my cat. Now, of course, I can call barkit of dog, right? Because dog, okay, dog implements bark. Okay, so we have that bark trait, and here we can only pass barks to our function. Okay, but we cannot say barkit for cat. Okay, this will work, but this will give us an error. So let's go ahead and run it. Okay, so we can see here the trait bound cat bark is not satisfied. So that is this problem here. But if I comment that out, we will get retriever barking. We will get the implementation from here. Okay, printed out in our function. So there you go. That is how you would use generics and traits together to limit the types of parameters that you can pass to a function.